Yes.
Namaste, everyone. Swagatam, wherever you are in India, USA, or Australia. Today, we have the privilege and honor to have Gaurav Rastogi ji. He's from the US. He's going to speak on Take Back Your Mind, Attention, and Energy. He spoke to us last year as well. The topic at that time was Karma Yoga for Professionals. Gauravji is an entrepreneur with more than 25 years of experience in executive roles. He has led large companies and founded and sold an AI startup. Gauravji's latest venture, Ekrasworks, creates tools to work with clarity, joy, and energy. They combine spiritual techniques, habit building, and workplace technology for professionals. Gauravji holds an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and a mechanical engineering undergraduate degree from Delhi Technological University. He has written 3 business books, the most recent one, Global Business in the Age of Destruction and Distraction, published by the Oxford University Press in 22. Gauravji is a board member and dean at Hindu Community Institute. That's where we met, with a unique program for teaching spiritual care and chaplaincy. He's a dhyana meditation and yoga teacher with a copyright of ERYT 500 and has taught in Silicon Valley for over 10 years. He's frequently invited to speak at events and conferences on the practices and philosophy of yoga and Hinduism. He also serves on the Inter-Religious Chaplaincy Advisory Board at GTU, that stands for General Theological Union, the advisory committee at the Hindu American Foundation, and also serves as the president of IIM Ahmedabad's North America Alumni Association. I would also like to express my gratitude to the Indian High Commission here in Canberra and to 2XX Radio for their support. And Gauravji, I really appreciate your joining us at a time suitable for us here in Australia, though it's a bit late in the evening for you. Thank you very much, and please begin.
Namaskar, and I'd like to also join you in thanking the High Commission, Indian High Commission at Canberra, and thank you, Jayanti ji, for inviting me to back to this year's International Day of Yoga celebrations, and to ask me to speak on this topic. I'll speak for about an hour, and we have about 90 minutes, right, Jayanti ji, overall?
Yeah, we can go up longer if
Okay,
you like.
wonderful. I will try to make it quick, and I'll invite any comments and conversations into the chat. And as the conversation goes along, I'll try to answer those questions as they come along. Now, before we begin, I'd like you to turn your phone off and put it on silent mode, maybe put it away. Sit silently for another 30 odd seconds, just taking in your attention and just being here in this present moment. Sitting comfortably, just breathe into the belly, letting the belly expand. Imagining helium balloons filled with air, helium. No, just letting them go. All your thoughts, all your preoccupations, all unfinished business. Imagine letting them go one by one, seeing them float away, up into the sky and away. You can now blink your eyes. Namaskar, my name is Gaurav Rastogi, and wait, let's see. This. Namaskar, my name is Gaurav Rastogi, and I will be talking to you about taking back our mind, attention, and energy. Over here to my right, you're going to see a few words. It'll help you keep track of what's going on and what I've been saying all this while. So it'll make it easier for me to talk. In terms of my background, I have a conventional business background in the sense that I'm an MBA from a good institute from India, engineer as well. But I'm also a yogi, so I've done yoga teacher training, 500 hours of experience, ERYT, that's what it's called. So I'm both a professional and a yogi. And in today's conversation, I will be talking about both, about how The practice of yoga, the practice of meditation, the practice of pranayama are important for today's professionals. Today's conversation, I'm going to begin with first establishing why this is important, what's happening in the world around us, why this has become important. Once we establish that, I will talk to you about 10 things that you need to do in order to take back your mind, attention, and energy, all of which is part of a service that I've started to help professionals become better professionals. In terms of my other background, I am part of the Hindu Community Institute, which we started 5 years ago. I'm a board member and a dean. And I also run the Living Deeply Foundation. Some of my ideas I've formed into a framework called the Yoga of Living Deeply. And through this foundation, my project is to take these ideas into the public sphere. In both these nonprofits, my intention and drive is to take the best ideas from the Hindu tradition and put them to work in making our lives more better quality, to make the societies better and more interconnected, and to generally propagate the tradition to future generations because it's meaningful and useful. All right. Now, in terms of the book that Jayantiji talked about, 5 years ago, a few of my friends invited me a talk. 6 years ago, they invited me to a talk on the future of the human worker. And this is because at that time I was running an AI startup and they were naturally curious, if your AI can do so much, what are we going to do? And because they knew I'm also a yogi, they said, come and talk to us about the future of the human worker. That conversation with my friends at a reunion led to a series of thoughts, and eventually we ended up writing a book called Global Business in the Age of Destruction and Distraction. This was published by the Oxford University Press last year. And here I'm going to talk to you about the 5 ideas from that book that relate to today's topic. Now, first we have to survey what's happening in the world. By the way, all some of the ideas I'm going to talk about in the second half, I created a series of meetings and I'll describe that. It's all available on my website, ekrasworks.com. So I'll come to that. Let's talk about what's happening in the world around us. We have found ourselves, I hope you will agree, in a time of great opportunity, great uncertainty. What's happening is, if you see, let me establish why I'm saying this. If you see how economies are running or industries are running, if you're a banker, you were a banker, now you work in a fintech. If you're a hotelier, you were a hotelier, now you're looking at hotel technology. What's happening is industries, companies, economies, countries, everything is being changed and disrupted. Even as of today morning, the head of the government of France is saying that because of social media channels like TikTok and others, social unrest is troubling really fast and it's creating chaos in the way the country is run. And so you get a sense that there's a tremendous volume of change that we're going through, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of opportunity. Like an accelerating forest fire, technology is sending wave after wave of disruption through companies, industries, and countries, and it's changing how we live, work, and play. This is a very disturbing thing because technology is moving really fast. What used to be, what used to take 50 years to travel through the population and become popular. You look at trains and how trains were established. From the time the first train track was laid to the time a quarter of the country was had tracks, maybe 50 years would have elapsed. That's 2.5 human generations passed between those two spots. Now, when a new iPhone is released, we have it within 2 weeks. When Tesla sends a new software to their car, you sleep with one car, you wake up with another car. That's how quickly technology is changing. And it's a very disconcerting experience because we're not designed, we haven't grown in terms of evolution with that sort of change. So we're in a period of great change. But it's not just disruption, destruction that technology is causing. If you look at the world outside of your eyes, everything is being destroyed, right? And remade. So you might think, okay, outside seems unfriendly. Maybe there's relief inside. But sadly, that is not the case. We are Technology is becoming exceptionally good at keeping us distracted and outraged. Technology is becoming really proficient at controlling our inner experience through this distraction and manipulation. If you see how you go to any family, any party, people are all looking at their phones. People are always checking their email and saying, oh, what is this new message? We have become used to this distraction. But it's not just distraction, it's also that we have become manipulated. We only see negative news. We only get these angry WhatsApp forwards. There are people that we want to be angry at all day. And that's what technology is designed for, because it feeds on engagement, and anger and fear drive the maximum engagement. Hate watching something is popular. We don't know it as well as technology has learned about us. And now we are prone to distraction and manipulation. So imagine this: the world outside has no relief for us. The world inside, we have no relief. So how are we going to thrive? To thrive, we need to do something different. We need to get to a place where we adapt to this new age of destruction and distraction, right? We cannot continue being more distracted. We cannot continue to hold on to an idea of the past when the world is changing dramatically. So we have to adapt. How are we going to adapt? We're going to adapt by become see what computers are going to do, our technology is doing. It used to be that we used animals for animal power, for plowing, for example. So strength was not our strong suit. Intelligence was our strong suit, but not anymore. Computers and technology will become better at both physical and intellectual jobs. What are we going to? We're going to have to move to higher ground. How will we move to higher ground? By retracing pathways to inner wisdom and intuition. And this is very important. As computers can do things, write documents, design things, write software programs, they can do a lot of that. What they can't do is purely human things, which are our ability to understand the connection between things, our drive for beauty, our taste for beauty and essence, our intuitive capabilities. Those things are what make us human. It is no longer our strength or our intelligence that make us a unique species. We have to climb higher. And by climbing higher, we will become more creative, more collaborative, and ultimately will become more human. It will be a very happy place to be. But it requires us to retrace those pathways to inner wisdom. The way forward is to go back and see what kind of things do we know about becoming more intuitive, more wise. And that's where I'm having this conversation on the International Day of Yoga, which is that we know a few things about inner wisdom. I'll talk about some of these in today's conversation. But first off, I'd like to talk to you about 5 ways to thrive. You have to look at the screen. Basically, I have on the screen 5 objects in one hand, and I will talk to you about each of those. How are we going to thrive? If you're a professional, you're going to have to thrive by learning 5 new things. These are the ideas from my book. Let me tell you about the first idea, which is the subject of today's conversation, which is, and these ideas are conveniently put into the palm of one hand. So let's see, is it this hand? It's this hand. This hand, I pull it back and right here, there you go, somewhere like this. You can see the hand? Okay. On one hand, you'll be able to carry back this entire talk, at least this half of the talk. On your thumb, what do we do with the thumb? This is the thumb that Eklavya used, right? It's the thumb that makes us grasp things. This is also the thumb we're using to browse on our phones. This opposable thumb we want to take back. What are we going to take back? We want to reclaim our mind, attention, and energy away from the browsing thumb and towards us. So that's the first thing to remember. To become a better professional, we now need to retake our mind, attention, and energy. Number two, the pointing finger. We tell you, what does the pointing finger do? It tells people what to do. You do this and so on, right? Now the pointing finger says something else. It says, give up the old playbook. What used to work for my parents' generation or my generation is not going to work for my children's generation because the world is changing. So instead of hanging on to old playbooks, get into the playground, do things, see what works. It doesn't work, do something else. And through the spirit of engagement, learn to see how the world has become. So that's the second thing that professionals need to learn. Third thing that professionals need to learn is the middle finger. This is polite company. I will not tell you what it means, but you know what the middle finger is. And here, instead of being afraid of other people, afraid of failure, we now have to embrace failure as a process outcome. I did something, it didn't work out. I'll do something else and see if that works out. Because again, the playbook has changed. We don't know what's going to work until you do it. And you do it, you expect to fail. If you never expect to fail, you're guaranteed to fail in the world that now. So the third thing that professionals to learn is to embrace failure as a process outcome. And that is a very hard thing for some of us who've been through this education system where we think success is only one type and failure is permanent. In fact, it's quite the other way around. Success is temporary. Sorry, failure is temporary, but we can learn to go over it. All right. Then we go to the ring finger. You know very well what the ring finger does. It is a sign of engagement. We need to learn to engage through storytelling. We need to tell each other stories because that's how we remember stuff. The reason Hindu tradition survived and many other traditions did not is maybe we had deeper, better stories, longer, more complicated stories that in the Mahabharata, they say if there is no story that isn't there in this story because it's so complex. And that allows us to engage and remember. And that's what is important here for professionals to learn because as it turns out, when you're creating something or you're driving something with your team, you need to tell them why they're doing this, how the world is changing, and so on. Even in this talk, I'm giving you a preamble on why the world is changing. That's a story. And that's important for you to understand my world. And that's why engagement through storytelling. The next and final finger is, of course, the pinky finger. If you talk to kids and you say, pinky promise, making promises, it turns out making promises is something that some of the richest people on the planet do now. In a way that there's a man sending things to Mars. Who has been to Mars? Raise your hand. We haven't. But he says, no, we have to go to Mars. And we believe him. I will sell you electric vehicles. And we believe him. The point is, these are all important things. We have to cultivate belief. In our education system, we are taught, it is drilled into us to have to be doubtful. Because you remember, we say QED, prove it, prove the following. We are taught to question everything, but we're not taught to believe. And because of that, we're filled with doubt, unable to act. And that's why modern education has become a wasteland. The more educated you are, the worse off you are because you're hesitant to take risks. And to take risks, you have to believe. And to learn to believe is a capacity that must be cultivated. Not just that, we think that reality is firm and solid. That is not the case. Reality is entirely what you make of. And this is a very yogic principle that I'm telling you. What we pay attention to becomes our reality. In fact, it's even the case in science that while you think you're seeing everything, you're only seeing 1.5% of all your entire vision at any given point of time. The rest, the brain is filling in rough data. You're not really seeing the entirety of what you think you're seeing. You're only seeing this much. The rest, the brain is filling out. Reality is something that we can shape. And this is an important thing because when you're trying to do new things that haven't been done, that reality that you live in can be completely different from the reality that somebody else lives in. You might live in the future, right? And the future does not exist yet. So, learning to cultivate belief and shaping our own reality are things that we can take away. So, 5 takeaways from the book. So, just to recap, and then so these 5 were again, I don't think you can read it, but what it's saying is reclaim your mind, attention, and energy. The rest of this talk is about that. Giving up the old playbooks and getting into the playground to learn by doing. Then to embrace failure as a process outcome on the way to success. Avoiding risk is fragility. Four is engagement through storytelling. Start with why and connect authentically, not fake stories, not made up stories, but real stories. Finally, the pinky finger. Cultivate belief and shape your own reality and freedom from doubting and growing towards whatever brings us joy, shaping our reality in a way that our view of the world brings us joy, not misery. And this is very important because today WhatsApp is going to bring you all sorts of miserable things, terrible images, terrible atrocities. But is the world truly collapsing on a day to day basis? Perhaps not. There is good in the world. There is great in the world. There is beauty and joy in the world. Let's grow to that. Let us shape our realities in a way that gives us joy. And so those are the five takeaways from the book. I'm going to pause here because I've covered a lot of distance. And I'm going to see if there are any questions, comments, or pushback. And then we can move on to the next 10 things in terms of how to take back the mind, attention, and energy. Any reflections, questions, or comments? All right, we move along. Okay, so now we're going to focus only on one thing, which is the opposable thumb, which is how do we reclaim our mind, attention, and energy? Let me describe why I'm using these three things. The mind is different from the mind is our subjective experience, how we perceive the world. And our mind might be filled with things that are unfinished, things that are going to work on next, things that we saw on television or on phone. So our mind can be filled with a whole bunch of things. Our attention may not be under our control. I'm reminded of this story of Mullah Nasruddin, where Mullah Nasruddin is sitting on his donkey as he does, and he's going through the town square. And so his friends ask him, Mullah, where are you going? Mullah silently looks at his friend, and he looks at his donkey, and he looks ahead, and he says, I'm going to the washerman's house to pick up my laundry. Okay. Then Mullah disappears. 2 minutes later, Mullah is back in the town square on his donkey, heading somewhere else. So his friends say, Mullah, where are you going? He looks at his friend, he looks at his donkey, then he looks ahead and he says, I think I'm going to go out of town. Nothing happens. He goes away. And then 5 minutes later, Mullah is back, still on his donkey, still going somewhere. His friends ask him, Mullah, where are you going? He says, I think I'm going to go home now. So his friends stop him. He says, look, what is wrong? What's going on over here? You said you were going to go to the washerman and pick up your laundry, but we don't see any clothes on. We said you said you were going out of town, but you came back. Now you're saying you're going home. What exactly is going on? Why don't you make up your mind? He says, look, you're asking the wrong person. The donkey knows where it's going. I'm only telling you where the donkey is going. Our mind, because our attention is not under our grasp, it goes here, it goes there, it goes everywhere, other than wherever we want it to go. And that's why our attention does not go. So now I've talked to you about mind, I've talked to you about attention. Let me talk to you about energy. In terms of our energy is divided into all the things that we're doing. A lot of our energy is spent in avoiding work, things that are so important that I want to do them at the right time. And so our energy is stuck behind it. Our energy is stuck behind useless projects or trivial projects. Our energy is wasted by being spent in the wrong avenues. And so if we take back energy and deploy it to one task with our entire force, then imagine the impact we can have. But we are distracted. We are moving from one thing to another. And therefore, our energy, and we are avoiding meaningful work. And so, our energy is out of our control. And that's why today's topic is take back your mind, attention, and energy. And I'm going to talk to you about ways to do that in this section. There are 10 ways there that you need to do it. And those 10 I combine into the system that I'm building at my own startup. But I wanted to give you an idea of what those are. All right. The first thing is this: to take back the mind, attention, and energy. Your samskara, what you do every day, what you do as a habit, is what you need to change. And for that, in the Hindu tradition, we have these yantras. You might have seen the Sri yantra. You might have seen the Durga yantra. There are yantras for all manner of divinity, and they're powerful mechanisms to create, to harness the energies of the universe and to create something. A calendar, a work calendar, your daily schedule is a mantra, is a yantra. Your daily calendar is a magic machine. What you pay attention to, it becomes your reality. And so, for things that matter to you, you have to take time out for those. Don't just go into the day and take it as it comes. Be mindful and meaningful in terms of how you organize your calendar. And a good way to do that is to set aside time, which is why we have our rituals in the morning and afternoon and evening. Set aside time for things that matter to you, for work that matters. And once you set it up in your calendar, you will notice that it miraculously creates a future. I'm reminded of this story from Sushma Swaraj, who used to be India's external affairs minister. And at one time was also the health minister. And she noticed that at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi, there were patients and patient families from out of the state. And those families would be staying outside on the street or nearby with a terrible inconvenience because they had to come from so far. So she asked, "Why are you coming here?" They said, "We don't have these facilities in our state." And so she said, "Why are these facilities not there?" Because there are no equivalent hospitals there. So she decided she wanted to open 6 AIMSs. Now, she didn't just decide that. She actually set aside time on her calendar to just look at it every week after week. It doesn't matter if you made progress or you didn't, just week after week looking at it. And within some time, she had the approvals for 6 AIMSs. And now I think there are 25 AIMSs in India. It's a miracle what you can do when you think of your calendar as a magic machine, as a yantra, as something sacred that allows you to control the future by harnessing your present time. And so that's the first thing, which is to think of your schedule, the things that you do, how you organize your time as a yantra. That's the first thing. The second is this: you have to put the big rocks in first. This is from Stephen Covey's book. Stephen Covey wrote this The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he used to tell this story that if you have a jar in which you have to put in big rocks, gravel, sand, and so on, how are you going to fill it? If you put the gravel in or the sand in first and then the gravel, you can't put the rocks, they won't fit. There's not enough space. So you might say, okay, there's not enough space for all the big rocks. But you can demonstrably see it yourself. You can fill the jar, but you put the big rocks in first. And so as you organize your calendar and your day, think about deprogramming away from always being busy. Think about the things that are important and putting those into your schedule first. Doing busy work, which is like gravel, little thing. Let it take its own time and let it happen at its own pace. Put the big rocks in first. When I meet professionals, this is often a challenge. Some of the most important work is delayed because it's too important to be done with a half available mind. You have a presentation, a proposal, a demo, a lecture you want to teach, and you will defer it until infinity because you're waiting for a clear day. The problem is you'll never get a clear day at this. The big rocks need to go in first. And that's the second thing. And this is part of, again, your samskara, the way you set up your day and your schedule and your dincharya makes a difference. So think about your dincharya, which I talked about in the calendar thing, and this, which is the next part, which is put the big rocks in first. The large things matter. Now, on to the third thing. The third thing is to be undistractable with deep work. To be undistractable, whatever that spelling might be. In the Gita, Shri Krishna is talking to Arjuna, of course. And so Shri Krishna is saying that the mind is many branched, infinitely branched for somebody who's unfocused. infinitely branched. But Vyavasayatmika, the person who is steadfast, has their mind only on one thing. Right? And that is the object of becoming undistractable. Find ways to learn, and I will describe a couple of those in the next few steps. Find ways to become undistractable with deep work, being able to say, look, there may be 200 things, but right now there's only one thing that I'm interested in. Learning that skill and building that habit is essential for today's professionals. I run these meetings, I've been running these meetings for the last couple of months now. And every time I run these meetings, people say that the amount of focus that they've had in that 1 hour meeting, they've never meditated before. They found that they have never been that focused is as many decades as they can remember because they're used to being distracted. Just today morning, it's been a long day. Someone gave me this feedback that not only was I not distracted, not only did I finish my work, I actually got better ideas because my mind was clear and I was focused only on one thing. And there I'm reminded of what Kabir Das ji said, right? Jin khoja tin paiya, whatever treasures I seek, gehre pani, whatever treasures I seek, I find deep into the inside the water. Main bari dubandari. But me, a coward, scared of drowning, afraid of drowning, rahi kinari bat. I sat by the shore. All treasures, every treasure that I want is available deep in the waters. But I am afraid of drowning, so I sit by the shore. We never go deep into the topics. All the wealth, all our ideas, all the intuition is available to us. But you have to go deep into it. But we sit at the surface where the mind is cluttered and we never get those insights. And so that's what this gentleman was saying in the morning, that not only did I finish my work, I had better ideas coming out of this. And this is a skill we need to have. Next, create a time box for work that matters. Time box is simply this idea. If there's something that requires, and you think it might take you 4 hours, one way to do it is to say, let me find 4 hours. Another way is to say, let me spend 1 hour and get as far forward as I can. I'll see you another 1 hour and another 1 hour. Create a box of time within which you're doing as much as you can, and then you stop it. I do this all the time instinctively, where I have these books and diaries. All right. In this diary, I will write down my notes and I will forget all about these notes. And in fact, it's a comical experience because I'm reminded of this story from Ramakrishna Paramahans, where he saw his photo and began to touch his feet, his own photo's feet, because he said he could feel the presence of God in the photo. Right? It's the same here when I see the things that I've written and I'm thinking, these are great notes. I wonder who wrote them because I don't recognize that I have done them. Because I did that in some moment and then they're gone, that moment has gone. And every time I come in, maybe I'm just too distracted. I look at this diary and I'm thinking, these are wonderful notes. Who wrote them? And that's the point of having a time box. You do a work in that box, you finish whatever you could finish, and then you come back later. That allows you to finish things without feeling guilty about it. That allows you to finish things in a way that is that is iterative, progressively. Karat karat abhyas ke jadmati vat sujan hai, they say. So through repeated practice, even the fool can become a wise man. And that's what we're doing by creating a time box. Uh, Next up is break tasks down with a timer. Not only create a time box, give yourself a certain window of time. There's a tomato timer called a Pomodoro timer, which is usually available in kitchen shops, right? Kitchen stores. It looks like a tomato. It usually has a 25, 30-minute timer. I suppose it's to boil tomatoes. I don't know. But it's called a Pomodoro timer. But what a timer does is quite interesting. In the yoga tradition, there's tamas and sattva, right? The three gunas. Sometimes we are feeling lethargic, so we're tamasic. Our mind is not moving forward, right? We need to activate. So how do we activate? By adding rajas to it, by putting a time barrier to our activity. It adds rajas, a certain degree of urgency to the task, which automatically brings us movement. So break tasks down with a timer. It could be a 30-minute timer, a 60-minute timer, or a 90-minute. But break it down with a timer that allows you to have the type of urgency that you need to finish. If you think you have a lot of time, then you'll move slowly. But if you have a finite time, you say, okay, what can I do in half an hour? Quick. And then you're able to get a little bit of urgency in that task by adding a little bit of rajas, just a hint of rajas. And that's it. All right. Next up, decluttering the mind. Decluttering the mind is important. I already talked to you about the Bahushakha Nantascha, right? The many branched mind of the irresolute. And decluttering is very important. Even Arjun says, right? Chanchalam hi manah Krishna. The mind is very restless. It's turbulent, strong, and obstinate. Oh Krishna, it appears to me that it is more difficult to control than the wind. The winds cannot be controlled, right? You can't really stop the winds, but the mind is even worse. So decluttering the mind is very important. And what I do with the meetings that I run is I ask when people we begin the meeting, I say, okay, just the way we did this right now, right? I told you to let those helium balloons go. All those ideas, unfinished work, there's a balloon, you let it go. Balloon, let it go. You have let those ideas go. But because these ideas are persistent, I actually maintain a diary, right? I ask people to say, write down the things that are floating around in the head. Just write them down. Feel under no obligation to do them. But the act of writing them down calms those demons down. Because the reason they're floating around in the head is they want your attention. And one principle in yoga is that whatever you pay attention to, it grows. If you pay negative attention, saying, no, don't think about the pink elephant, okay, then you will see a pink elephant in your mind. Because anything you feed with attention, it grows, even if it's a negative image. So you can't ask your thoughts to go away. That's a foolish proposition because any thought you push away, propel, or expel, it stays there harder because it says, oh, I got attention. Let me hang around a little bit more. Let me feed off this lovely attention that I'm getting. So, how do you control your mind? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha, right? The vritti is the swirling of the thoughts in the mind. Chitta vritti nirodha. But the nirodha cannot happen by running after the thoughts because that only encourages them and they run harder, become more persistent. They build grooves, right? So, how do you stop the thoughts? You say, okay. And as a meditation and yoga teacher, I'm sure those of you who you are, you already know this. You say, okay, I have noticed you, my friend. I've written it down. You're here. I will come back to this list 1 hour later. Pakka. For now, I've got you here. I respect you. Now go away. Now, what you've done is you've said, okay, I've given you enough attention to tell you that I'm not going to give you attention. Now get the heck out of here, right? Respectfully. So, what it does is it calms the mind down. That fear that you're missing out on these very important thoughts, some amazing idea or some terrible thing that you could have avoided if you paid attention to, that sense of anxiety just goes away because you know you caught it. You can catch it. The world is not collapsing within the next 1 hour. So perhaps 55 minutes later, the world will still be there. This problem will still be, and we will solve it then. No problem. What it does is it declutters the mind. This is very important to focus. All right. Next, mastering the mind through dhyana meditation. Now, learning to meditate is very important. And so the process of meditation is quite simple. In fact, it's so simple and essential that right in the middle of the battlefield, where 4.5 million people are ready to, for a do or die combat, 10 people, other than 10 people, everybody else is going to die. Such high stakes. And in the middle of that conversation, Shri Krishna is telling Arjuna, this is how you should meditate. This is why meditation is important, because even if it's do or die, being able to direct attention, being able to illuminate our consciousness with our mind are both important. And both types of consciousness are at work during dhyana meditation, where we're aware of everything and a specific thing simultaneously. We are both relaxed and alert at the same time. And so, mastering the mind with dhyana meditation, and you have to work with a teacher who knows what they're doing. But this is entirely possible and must be something that every professional must learn, because what else do we offer to our companies now? If it's our simple presence, our ability to compute things, spreadsheets can do that. Ability to write emails, chat GPT, AI can do that. If it's our ability to send emails or read emails, AI can do that now. We are here to bring attention to the important things. We are here for our intuitive capabilities, our insights, our genius. That requires an ability to direct the attention to anything we wish to direct it. And that directive attention is part of dhyana meditation. And that's why mastering the mind is important. Next is to find a state of flow. A state of flow is when time seems to flow. They say time flies when you're having fun. And so there's been a lot of research. There's a gentleman called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, complicated spelling, but you already know flow psychology. The flow psychology is very simple. People find themselves in across different fields in states where they're in, it's very enjoyable, it's very pleasurable, and yet time seems to fly. And so he did this research. I said, how do people get into that stage? And what he found was interesting. You look at task, how complex, how difficult the task is, and how much capability I have. And it needs to be even mix of both. If the task is very difficult and my capabilities are less, then I'm bored. I'm anxious. I'm very anxious. I don't think I can do it. I don't have the capabilities to handle this task. On the other hand, if the task is low difficulty and I have more computational capability, more capability than that, then I'm just bored. I feel tired. I just don't want to do it anymore. It's just boring. You get into a state of flow only when the task is difficult and the user has high capability. This, of course, is yoga karma sukashalam. I think I will talk about that anyway on the next slide. Yes. So yoga karma sukashalam. Yoga is skill at work, developing skill. So how do you get into this state? You get into the state by taking on challenges. You get into the state by building your capabilities, always learning new things, always going to the edge of what's possible for you today, right? And then finding that place where you have the skills and it's a challenging task. And now you're feeling challenged and pulled. And you're learning something in the process, you're growing, and that's when you achieve this state of flow. This is the state we wish to reach. And more, I'm almost wrapping up. We also want to get to a state. We want to develop excellence with habits. Like I said in the previous slide, yoga karmasu kaushal. Yoga is skill at work. And habits are samskara, right? Things we do mindlessly without thinking about. So changing our samskaras, building better habits of excellence is what we need to do. And those habits, there is a lot of science and research on how habits are. So there is a cue, something that triggers the habit. For example, smokers often feel the urge to smoke. There's a cue. You meet a friend, they get a tough email, whatever, or it's 11 o'clock, they get a cue. There's a habit, which is in this case smoking, and there's a reward, in which case nicotine gives them a sense of calmness. And so cue, habit, and reward. And understanding how your habit system works, you can take the regular cues and change the habit and get a different reward or the same reward. And so learn how your mind works and rewire your habits. Learn to put new samskaras, new grooves of habit into yourself through this process. All right. And then I'm going to, I think I am wrapping up. I have, okay. So these are the 10 things. I'm going to recap just quickly so you see what's going on. But think of your calendar as a yantra, as a magical device to create the future out of today. The second was that you now need to put the big rocks in first, the big things, the important things, and not just being busy. Being busy is not helpful. Put the big things in first and then be busy. Don't be too busy for the big things. Be undistractable with deep work. Learn to lose distraction, not be distracted. Next, I said, create a time box for work that matters. Next, we talked about break tasks down with a timer. Insert some urgency into the task. Rajas, declutter the mind. Chanchalam Himana Krishna. Let it not be, let it be calm. Dhyana meditation is next, mastering the mind. Then we talked about trying to reach that state of flow. And finally, we talked about developing excellence through better habits. And all these 10 ideas, when I started my new venture, my project is to, because I wrote the book, because I'm a yogi, because I like building things. I'm a manual person. I like building things. I said it must be my responsibility to fix the problem that I've identified. Why else has God put me on this earth and told me about a problem if He didn't want me to solve it? So I said, let me try to solve it. So what I've done is, I've all these 10 ideas that I told you about, I've created a 1 hour meeting. It's very simple. The way it works is quite elegant and quite elegant. It's a 1 hour meeting. You show up to this 1 hour meeting. And in that meeting, I tell you to bring only one piece of, we declutter the mind at the beginning. And for 20 minutes, I take you through a guided meditation, by the end of which your mind is wiped clean. You have taken charge of your mind and attention, and your energy is flowing smoothly in 20 minutes. 40 minutes of the time, you work on the thing that you're working on, and I'll hold your attention like the reins of a horse. I hold the attention, your attention together, because I keep reminding you that I'm still holding you accountable for doing one thing you came into. And in the end, we take stock. And it seems to be working for people. And again, in Australia, people are interested in, and this is for free right now. And I'm building a commercial offering, but it's free. If you're interested in joining the pilot, you let me know. We'll find time. This is a convenient time for me. So you can join the pilot and tell me how this works for you. That's all I had to say, Jayantiji. So now I'm open to questions and comments and feedback.
Thank you very much. Because you brought in Stephen Covey, and I have a group for my application I send sometimes. So this one is from Humanities. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priority. And your big
Exactly.
rocks one that resonated with me. If that's the only takeaway I have, I think my work will improve a lot and I'll be able to. The five things you had told us in the class, but today it made more sense to me.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Sure thing. Any other questions, comments, feedback? Shantiji?
Gauravji, thank you very much. We met last time in the same session last year.
Sure.
So thank you again for your time. Really enjoyed. And I still remember your message from last year and today also very beautifully spoken and very practical tips relevant. So I just want to thank you for very enlightening and a useful presentation. And I do, Big Rocks you mentioned is quite close to me at work. We talk every day, every week. We come and first thing we do every week at work is what are the big rocks for our team. So it's something very close to me. I think the challenge is right. I think in personal life, the big rocks and the gravel and the sand is often we get mixed up. It comes with practice, but often sometimes it's not easy to do in practice. At work, I think your priorities are a little I would say, at least because it's not my business, I work for a government and we set the priorities and we stick it and we know what the big rocks is. In personal life, it's not straightforward. At least I found it's not straightforward and you get distracted time to time. Again, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying I'm sharing my own experience that it's easier said than in practice, but it's something you get better at it. And then I like your time box. I like your approach. And again, I wish I known this when I was 30. I'm 60 plus. Is nevertheless, it's not late. I'm learning at 60, not at 80. I'll look at that way. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gaurav is doing something with young people as well. If anyone's interested, I'm sure he'll extend it to Australia. He's doing
Yeah,
it for young women in India.
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So, Kumarji, you want to say something?
Yes, Gauraji, as usual, it was a very, very informative and very thought provoking. I liked the calendar as a yantra. Definitely, I'll work on it just to make sure that I know what I'm going to do, declutter things and make it sure that I'm doing meditation regularly. Yes, I felt this like a satsang. It's very important that we keep ourselves listening to people like you just to keep on track with the task that we have taken on. Thank you very much for that. And thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some sort of echo on her line.
Hello?
Hello? No, it's going echo. I could also relate to what you said, Gauravji, about the boredom and when you're more able and the task is not that good and you get bored. And
Yeah.
that happens
But-
to me a lot. I get really
Yeah.
bored with things.
15 years ago, I done a lot of research on this particular thing. My takeaway was that Gandhiji had a charkha. What he was doing was not just making threads out of cotton. He was also doing a physical activity that was low involvement, and that increases the amount of complexity of whatever he's doing. And so, even if you were previously going to get bored doing something, he has added a challenge of doing this charkha thing. And now he's no longer going to get bored because it has a little bit of challenge in it. So I thought that was an interesting thing that he did. This is my theory, of course, but I think it's a good theory.
Because that's when I get distracted and then I start checking my messages or I do this or I do something else.
Yeah.
Waste my time.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody, Kalpana, you want to
Yeah.
come in now?
Not
Kalpanji,
echoing.
welcome. Now you're back. Yes. Yeah. You're not echoing now. Yes.
Yeah. So I have two questions. One is, so we all know there are like different personality types, like this Myers-Briggs and all of that, right? So when people go to IITs and IIMs, they are actually using their intellect. So all these strategies that people are coming up with is using the intellect. But in real life, we know that if you look at Swami Chinmayananda's body, mind, intellect, that mode, not everybody is high on the intellect. There are some people who are emotionally driven. Their mind is like stronger than the intellect. For such people, like what I would like to ask is all these things about time boxing, decluttering the mind, everything works if you're very logical, analytical, rational, the intellectual type who is able to think. But for the people who fall into the mind dominant personalities, what sort of advice would you give them in order for them to streamline their life? That is first question. I'll come to the second question later, maybe if you can address it.
Okay. It is the case that most of our sort of professional types these days are head people and not as much heart people. And there are heart people as people who deal with the emotional styles. My own theory, I'll give you my theory first, then I'll try to answer your question. My own theory is that actually most work is not so complex that it requires IQ 170 people. Most work is actually fairly common. And so people have excess IQ, which is why in my 25 years or more than 25 years of work experience, I find that because people have excess IQ left over, then there's politics, there are mind games or status games, all sorts of stuff, because people are just trying to use their brains for something that is worthwhile, right? Because the task itself does not require that much computational complexity. So in that sense, I feel that there's a term that techies use, it's over-indexing. I feel that intellectual is over-indexed. And in fact, if you see the 5 things I talked about, I never said become smarter or intellectually, because it makes no difference to anything. The intellect is responding to the ideas that it has. And those ideas come from insight, from intuition, from the emotional contents of your consciousness. And that a lot of smart people don't have control over. I think statistically smart people are more likely to be depressed than not so smart people. So there's something about that. I would say that now the question is, do these approaches work for people that have other modes of being productive, such as their emotional connection, intuitive faculties, and so on? I would say this makes them even more powerful, because again, none of these 10 things have anything to do with how to do computations better or how to use your brain better, how to be more present, how to be more intuitive, how to listen harder. These are things that the intuitive person is already good at. But imagine how much more that will be amplified if they're able to take find the time, find the space, find that center within themselves. So I think it'll be even more effective for intuitive and emotional people than it is for intellect.
Okay, thank you. Because I just thought that organizational skills is
Hmm.
more falling under the intellect rather than the emotions. That was my reason.
Correct, correct. But the thing is, when you in communication theory, they teach, right? They say there are, this is Seneca's works. So there's ethos, pathos, and logos. Logos is the logic. Pathos is the emotional content. Ethos is your own authenticity, your own authority. And people pay attention more to your ethos and pathos, less to your logos. Your logical, your argumentation is maybe 12 to 15% of any actually convincing argument. The amount of emotional value you bring into it. If you're joyous, people will feel the joy. If you're angry, people will feel the anger, right? That conveys a lot more weight, and your own authenticity and presence conveys the deepest. Who's saying it is more important than whether they're saying the right thing or not, in most cases, for most of us. So, for organizational capabilities, you would often see, and again, I say this with a tremendous sense of humility. Look, I went to the most elite education programs in India. So, I had a sense of, oh, I'm smarter than people, right? But over my decades of work experience, I realized that my smartness makes no difference to anything. In fact, my smartness is possibly a disadvantage because I'm over relying on it. And so I've learned to tune down and listen harder and be more humble and give more space and credence to people that don't sound like they're articulate, don't sound like they're intelligent, but they have more persistence, they have more hunger, they have more drive. And that's what makes them successful. So I've learned through bitter experience that look, intellect is not the only thing that you should look at. And highly recommend that to everybody else. Right now, there's no point over prioritizing in the intellect. It's already in excess. We have to over prioritize all these other things. Drive, hunger, perseverance. Those are all spiritual disciplines. I mean that in the sense that when I have to convince you to do something, right? It isn't my argument that is swinging. It's the force with which I'm saying. It's my own credibility as someone who's saying, right? My moral authority makes a difference. We run a nonprofit institute. All of us are here. None of us are earning any money. I get nothing out of it. Right? Why are 200 people working with us? Because we are working really hard. And so, because we're working really hard, we have the authority to call people up and say, look, do this, and say, you know what, this guy's doing so much work, maybe I can do this. That authority matters. It matters for far more than the logic of my argument. So that's what I've learned from my own career.
Thanks very much. That was really great. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you too.
The next question I had was, people generally tend to do things that they enjoy, they get a pleasurable outcome, or they love doing, they are passionate about. Whereas, for example, in my own case, I hate going to gym because I find it very repetitive, monotonous. So if I have a membership, I've lost more money than not going than going. So I tend to put it off and off. So I can see that sometimes throughout the day it is weighing on my mind, but I'm not inclined to do it. So I tend to do more things that attracts my brain rather than going to do this. So finally, I end up going at 8 o'clock or something. What I'm trying to do is you like preparing for exams. I used to do that too, not study at all, but in the last day before the exam, just do what I can and go and try to do that. I'm sure most of us are in that boat. We tend to put off things that we don't enjoy doing. So What is the solution to that? This is a very practical thing for me, and I'm sure what people hate can differ from person to person. But I think that's a common trait for most of us.
Hate is obviously a very subjective word. What I can tell you, what I found interesting is that if I pay attention to something, it becomes interesting. And so what I've tried to do is figure out how to pay attention to the things that I need to be interested in, right? And then it automatically becomes interesting. So there's a couple of things that I'd like to say. One thing was this: pay attention. The other is your sense of self has to change, right? It's not that going to the gym is boring, because there are so many people who enjoy going to the gym. It isn't that, I don't know, some laborious task is boring. So many people do it. We have to change our sense of self. We have to learn to change our sense of self. I have to think of myself as a person who goes to the gym, a person who works out. And then I'll figure out what the intuition is. Why do they like it? And so on. So that's another thing. Another thing I'd like to offer to you is that, remember how there are songs that are set to the horse or the train or the boat?
Yeah.
Like the Ailasa thing for the boats.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct,
Yeah, yeah.
correct. Every trade that involved doing repetition had their own song, their own music, because music makes everything change. You can repeat things forever because it's suddenly more enjoyable. Understand the rhythms of the thing you're doing. Tune into the rhythm, and it'll become interesting. The problem, of course, is when you go to the gym, there's no rhythm. It's just something or other thing. So you have to figure out what the beat, what the rhythm of that whole thing is. It's one part, the music that you play. The other part is the whole cycle, the rhythm of the whole thing. You need to understand that. So those are just some hacks that I'd like to offer. I don't think that's a satisfactory answer. It's what I do.
Oh, thank you. It's worth pondering over. Thank you.
I'm wondering what music I must think of when I'm watching this. And
Oh, for
when
washing
did you
dishes. Yeah, they're not. So you have to see the underlying beat of the dishwashing thing, right? Washing dishes, okay. There are some old songs that I like to listen to. Anyway, so I have music for every type of thing that I'm doing, because the RPM, the beat, the intensity of the thing matters a lot.
I usually play some music which I'm trying to learn, or I listen to some YouTube talk
Yeah,
or something. So I'm doing two things.
sure, yeah, sure.
But I want to ask you about multitasking because your thing is about attention and focus. Now, some articles say it's good. Women are very good in multitasking. And now recent research is saying no, it's not good. What is your take on it?
I'm a habitual multitasker. I am, because again, I've over the decades become someone who does many things. I'm like a virtuoso type of thing, right? You read this. The problem with that is it's not actually effective at all. So I've had to invent hacks to get myself into the rhythm of focusing on one thing at a time. This bell is an example. I actually have sand clocks in my desk. I have this timer. I have all manner of things to keep me focused all the time. And so I break things down into time buckets. And then the other thing is the thing is, if you go to a yoga class, when you do yoga classes, do you not do deep relaxation at the end? It's the prasad, the gift at the end that people get, that they come to the whole class for. It's the payoff for doing the class. It's the same with focus work. At the end of focus work, when I look at the things that I've done and satisfactorily I circle the thing, I said, this is done. I feel so good about it that I think twice about, should I try to multitask? I want the good feeling, not the feeling that, hey, I just spent this entire day and nothing came out.
I must share something, not about multitasking, but I reward myself.
Yeah,
I like those shortbread cream biscuits a lot. I'm addicted. I try not to buy. But when I have a lot of repetitive work, I do half an hour, then I go and sit and have one with it, and I feel
yeah.
like I rewarded myself for pushing. And
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, it's a great example.
One more last question is you said you're a yogi, you've done the 500 hours and all of that stuff, right? So as a practicing yogi, what are because there's so many yogasanas, kriyas and all sorts of things like pranayama, meditation, there's a whole gamut of things. So can you tell us like what is the thing that you practice in your daily life? So what is a key takeaway for us from you as a yogi?
Okay, I'll let you see my room. So my room, so basically, my work office is also my meditation room and my yoga room. So this is my kuti. This is where I am most of the time. My yoga practice I learned from the US branch of Vyasa. So the sequence of postures I follow a Shivananda ashram sequence. That's the sequence that I enjoy the most because it's now all hardwired in my brain. I never think about it. When I teach the class, I do other postures. When my own sequence, this is what I do. Shivananda sequence. On pranayama and meditation, I've taken diksha from several schools. In my own practice, the one I teach is different because I don't have adhikara to teach that. The things I have diksha and I teach from my own experience. But my own practice is a mix of several different systems stacked on each other in a way that it's stable. So I have the initial cleansing. So my pranayam is a very active pranayam. Then the shodhan is say simple shodhan, and then yoga. That's the core of the actual meditation practice. And then the sitting in silence with no breath. That's from another teacher in Rishikesh that I learned that practice. And when he taught the practice initially, he said, anyone who teaches you pranayam, they will not get you to a state where you're not breathing, but I will get you to the state with breathing. And it sounded like a boast to me at the time, but he was right. He was able to teach a practice with it. You can get to the state and never have to breathe, and that's the practice. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
thank you so much, Kalpana. Any other questions for Gaurav?
All right. If there are no more questions, I appreciate your time. I appreciate that you came to listen to this talk over the weekend and for the interactions we've had. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Vamsi, for your class.
Thank you.
I'll let you know about future programs. So, have a good rest of the weekend. And Gauravji, happy week. Namaste.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Garoji. Bye.